Hi, everyone. My name is Naveen Thadani, and I'm the co-founder and CEO at Evinced. We are a technology company that focuses on digital accessibility specifically. And what we do within that space is we help enterprises shift accessibility left. What does that mean? Well, as enterprises develop software, whether it's for the web or whether it's for mobile, we help them integrate accessibility into their development process. We work mostly with very large enterprises that have been doing accessibility for a long time, and they have a lot of these very sophisticated processes around their accessibility program, but they've been doing this a while. So when they started out, which is some of where all of you are today, when they started out, they faced a certain set of challenges, and obviously they had to overcome them with support from their internal teams and management and the engineering teams. So there were a lot of lessons learned, and we thought it would be really helpful today for some of these enterprises to come in and share their stories. So to help us with this discussion, I'm going to turn it over to my good friend Donna. Donna is the head of all accessibility technology at Microsoft, which has, in my view, the world's most sophisticated accessibility program. And we're going to have her share her experiences and also, talk to the panel about theirs. So with that, I'm going to turn it over to Donna.
Hello, everyone, and thank you so much for joining us today at Learn from Leaders 2023. Today, I am joined by some of my favorite accessibility leaders from across the industry, and we are going to share with you some of the lessons we have learned throughout our accessibility journeys. We're going to share with you things that did work, things that did not work, and some shenanigans we may or may not have caused along the way. Thank you so much for joining us. Hello, panel. Good morning.
Hello. Good morning.
Thank you for joining us.
Thank you.
Okay, so let's introduce ourselves. Aileen, please tell us about your career.
Great. Happy to be here, Donna. My name is Aileen Hackett, and I work at Servicenow. I've been there about 5 years, and I started out there as product lead for design systems. But about 2 years ago, I realized that we really needed to start treating accessibility like a product. And so I asked, could I move full-time into accessibility? And very happy to have done that. We've been on a journey with this new accessibility team over the last year and a half.
All right, you.
Thanks, Donna. I'm Mark Pennycook. I'm the head of digital accessibility at Capital One. I've been in financial services for about 20 to 23 years or so now. The last 10 all at Capital One as part of our accessibility program. And so our journey is something that I love to talk about. We try to help and share best practices.
All right, Fred, tell us.
My name is Fred Moltz. I am the head of accessibility at Verizon. Been on this journey now for 8 years. It's been a very exciting journey. There's been ups and been downs, and we'll talk about that today. I do love this panel in terms of the conversation we're going to be having today and just kind of sharing these best practices and the experiences because it may sound easy as you're hearing us talk, but it's not.
Okay, so here is a truth. Right now, there's a whole set of companies that totally acknowledge accessibility is extremely important, and they're fully willing to invest time, energy, money, all the things to make it happen. But many companies are not yet on that journey, or they want to be, but they don't even know how to start. What do you all think is a powerful and effective way to convince management to implement a digital accessibility program without it being some big, scary, expensive thing? Aileen, let's start with you.
I think a lot of companies, I think everybody really wants to do the right thing. And I think the leaders, if you talk to them, they all want to do the right thing, but it's finding a way to connect with them. Find a champion. I think it was helpful for us to have a champion in leadership at Servicenow. She had family members with disabilities, and she was really able to be a big champion for us to convince other leadership that they should prioritize this. And also the business side of it. I mean, everyone now expects inclusive, accessible software. And so if you're not selling that. If your product is falling behind in that, you're not going to be in the competitive space. So I think those two things are helpful, finding a champion and then, using the business case.
I love that champion idea, because it is so true. Executive sponsorship can totally make or break a program. And I love what you said about reaching out to somebody who has some sort of a personal experience.
There's so many people who have disabilities and, whether they're visible or invisible.
Right.
So finding that empathy is really important.
Definitely. All right, Mark, what do you think?
Yeah, it's such a great question. And the first reaction I have is knowing your audience and who you're talking to when you're talking to a designer versus talking to a developer versus talking to someone maybe who's in product or the business. The things that are compelling about accessibility can be different for all of those. So I would say, one, start with that knowledge of there's not one answer or one way to go about this. It's continuous. This isn't a one-time conversation. You're not going to go make a business case or have a presentation to leadership, to executives, and then be able to walk away and come back 12 months later.
So what do you think, Fred?
So the biggest thing that people should remember is celebrate the little wins.
Yeah,
share those wins.
Yeah.
Let
So
people
much.
know you did something. It could be very small, but it's better than what you did yesterday.
Right.
And so again, just a level set. It's a journey.
Yes.
You have a beginning.
Yes.
You don't have an end.
We found at the very beginning of setting up our program, there were 3 things we did that actually did work. The first one was gathering up an employee resource group, right? Because there are people in your company with disabilities, and at first that might be gather the whole posse together, right? Like collect your flowers. You've got the blind folk, limited mobility folk, colorblind folk, dyslexic folk, everybody. We form an ERG and just gather feedback on our own products. So once you gather feedback on your own products from your own ERG, then have the support team, whoever does your customer support, just track accessibility issues separately, right? With a tag or a queue or whatever, however you want to do it. Then you're able to see, are you getting calls for accessibility on your products from external customers? The kinds of things that your internal employee resource group are bringing up. Because now you've got a business case. Now you're saying, okay, we have people in our company with these problems, you have customers with these problems, and then the third thing you can do is show, actually, we've already done accessibility, right? Here are all the accessibility things we've done in our company. Some of it's, we've made these websites accessible. Some of it's, we've introduced colorblind mode for this product. Did you know that? So I love that, right? Where send the report out saying, here's who we talked to, here are the open issues, and here's the wins. Because then leadership is like, oh, it's not some big scary thing we start at 0. You're starting at 1 to get to 5, not starting at 0 to get to 5.
Correct.
So all of you are at companies where you're pretty advanced in your accessibility journeys. So can you share a little bit, and maybe let's start with you, Aileen, about what that evolution kind of looked like and some of the key activities maybe you all did to make it?
I think a lot of people at Servicenow over the years, really cared about making accessible software. But when your job is not 100% on accessibility, it can be challenging, So I think having people whose job is 100% about accessibility has really helped. I think that was important. And then also, I feel like one thing we did as well when we, revisited this program the end of 2021 was we focused on a few key things. One of them was training. And so we built a training program. It's mandatory. Every employee at Servicenow has to take the introduction to accessibility, which was a big win. I love that.
I tell everybody, I lead with accessibility as, yes, it's a big social problem, et cetera. But when we look at all of us looking at the digital accessibility problem, that is a code problem. And when we teach people to design better code and write better code and test code better, we're actually doing our job. It's not some special thing you do on the side.
I think that's hugely important and I don't know historically why this was the case, but in my experience, going back, some time, accessibility was considered separate, different, distinct from other things that it's like, no, it's not. We need to treat it the exact same way. This is a measure and a dimension of code quality. It's not different than these things, not from a place of not wanting to do it, but from a place of not having the enablement.
Right.
And there's so many things you can do that are low cost, low level of effort. The training is a great one. There's so much great free training
much
out
free
there
training.
that you could easily access. So you don't have to have a huge budget or investment or things to get that piece started.
I love that you both brought up training, and especially there's so much free training out there. And if you just look up like Accessibility for Developers 101, there's endless training that you can take on how to make your websites accessible. And it can seem overwhelming at first, but again, this is a code problem. We know how to do this, and once you do it, you know how to do it.
I think the thing that's important too, I mean, see what everyone else thinks, is also knowing what that means for you at your company and at your organization.
Right.
There are some very specific things that you want to make sure that you have addressed or defined for how you are going to implement. It's not exactly one size fits all in every way, but that's important to help be successful at where at your company or at where you are, is looking at those decisions, defining those, and kind of helping to socialize that of how you're approaching and applying.
And I think to that point, it's also a learning experience overall for you as the person creating the program, rolling out the program. Because there's a lot of information out on the web in terms of how should you do it. And again, I just want to reiterate for everybody, it is not a one size fits all. So it's really important, because I do think the trap that some people fall into and get very overwhelmed with is they'll work with a company and they'll say, well, this is what you need to do. But remember, they don't know your company inside and out.
Nope.
Again, there's no playbook or blueprint that says this is how you do accessibility for your company.
Nope.
So when you do hit that wall because you tried something, don't get discouraged by it.
It's inevitable. The experiment method.
The experiments, that's the point.
The great thing about the accessibility landscape is it's kind of contagious. Somebody bites into it, they're in, right? Because you're seeing where it makes a difference, not just for individuals, but even for a person who doesn't have a disability, because those opportunities really benefit everybody.
Right.
And that's what people forget.
We love to use Microsoft's Inclusive Design Toolkit, which makes a great visual presentation of permanent disabilities, temporary disabilities, situational disabilities, because we all need accessibility. It's just a matter of what the timing or when.
Yeah, that's a great point, because the temporary, I was working with somebody in my work, and she was in a skiing accident and broke her arm. And she was going, gosh, I understand now why keyboard is so important. And I'm like, yes, it is. Yeah.
One of our product managers experienced the exact same thing. And that's why I was like, maybe more people should go skiing. Because suddenly our products started getting better in dictation magically in the last year, because everyone during COVID, everyone went skiing, and they haven't skied ever. So they had all kinds of weird injuries happen. But suddenly our dictation started to improve by leaps and bounds, because suddenly it affected everybody. So speaking of biting, you mentioned biting, but if we want to bite off a small achievable piece to get started, something very achievable, what is a tiny thing that someone can do this on Monday to get started on their journey? Aileen, what do you think?
I like what you were mentioning earlier, like about the ERG groups, or if you have a diversity, equity, and inclusion group.
Right.
I would reach out to them and you see if you can do a partnership and bring some awareness to accessibility to your engineering community and your designers and product managers, making sure that they all understand what it is that we want to do. And so I think, that's a good place to tap into, if you have an ERG group or diversity, equity, and inclusion.
What do you think, Mark?
The things that I would point to, we mentioned one, which is training, and there's so many free, great resources that are out there. Spend some time looking at those and, kind of picking the ones that might be the best for your organization. But the second thing that I would say is begin some conversations, have a dialogue, a lunch and learn, a quick pull-up, just to get conversations going with some of the peers and the resources and the other stakeholders that are responsible for accessibility. We say the same thing, which is it's everyone's job. Like it takes all of us. Like it can't be just one business unit or one group in tech or one group in product or this. It's a community. It takes all of that. And I think the best way to start driving some awareness and getting some engagement is really just having conversations and sitting down. But you have to continue.
You have to continue it,
Keep them going, keep them going, keep them going. But you don't need a huge budget for that, and that's something that anyone can do right away.
It doesn't have to be this overwhelming, big splash. It's just try and connect dots across your organization. You're going in Monday for the first time, and you know what? How about that PowerPoint you're working on for somebody? Let's start with some simple scenarios. Add all text. It's a very simple thing to do and be like, hey, I made a presentation that's accessible. Sell it that way.
Yes.
Show people how it's easy. Those little things, maybe little to each and everybody in the audience, but it goes a long way.
Oh yeah.
Try
Okay.
again.
Can I tell you a shenanigan I pulled once? So my team, I was on a team that was working on a new product, so they didn't quite understand accessibility. And I said, okay, we're going to do a 1-hour ACK hack. And what 1-hour ACK hack? They're like, what is a 1-hour ACK hack? You just invite everybody Wednesday from noon to 1. Everybody bring something you're working on right now, and we're all going to make it more accessible toward more customers. It doesn't matter what you're working on, bring it, and we're going to do a little bit of primering, and then everyone will do hands-on work for 1 hour to make that thing accessible. And everyone is invited. Designers, PowerPointers, document, code, everybody. Just get together in a room, virtually, it doesn't actually matter. And everyone brought like completely different things. That was ACK Hack 1, and every week, this thing started to grow. Week 1, it was like 8 people. Week 2, it was like 34 people. Week 3, I said, okay, there's too many people. And that's how the culture spread in the team.
It's human nature.
It's human nature.
People want to work together.
They want to work together.
Solve
Problems, real problems.
This makes me think that 2 things I would want to make sure everyone kind of remembers is get creative and also have some fun.
Yeah, have fun.
So one of the things that we do is every new design hire at Capital One has onboarding that we have a presentation and to introduce them to accessibility at Capital One. But their orientation is 2 days, they're meeting lots of people, they're getting lots of information. And we started to realize rather than try to tell them all about accessibility and all the parts of our program and hope that they remember that with all of the other things that they're learning, we wanted to do something different and say, we just want you to remember us, remember this accessibility team and this accessibility function. So we can imagine a classroom of, say like maybe 20, 30 people, everyone's at tables. And so we would introduce ourselves, introduce the program, but then in the end, on the table would have Post-it notes and pens and paper and things like that. And we would say, first off, take those and build an accessible house. And then while they're doing that, we said, afterward, we've talked to you today, write down one word about accessibility or one thing that you'll remember about it. And we would collect all of those. And then some of the folks on my team can play guitar and sing. So we would gather up all of those words and then ad hoc make up a song and play a guitar and sort of sing a song about accessibility using all of the words that they gave us. And then that was the end of our session. But you would be amazed at how many people then remembered us. And like, 2 weeks down the road, they're like, hey, from training, remembered and onboarding, remembered you guys, and now I have a question, and I remembered where to find you and how to engage
Mark,
with you.
we're going to
and
ask
stuff
you
like
to
that.
sing the song.
Yeah, I want to hear the accessibility song. Yeah.
But I think, what Mark's saying is really important. When you're starting the journey and you're talking about accessibility and the importance of it and how it makes a difference in what everybody's doing at your company, don't pretend to think they're going to remember all that you're sharing. If they remember your name and they know to go to you and ask that question, that's a win.
Yes.
Right?
Right.
Let them know who to talk to.
Right.
And have that conversation with. And I think Mark and Eileen said it perfect. We're not necessarily here as an accessibility team to tell you exactly how to do everything.
Right.
It's a partnership.
Okay, so next. If we don't have much accessibility expertise in the house, how do you think about hiring for that versus outsourcing or some mix of the two? Thoughts? around it. Let's start with Fred this time because I keep putting Aileen in the hot seat.
That's all right.
Yeah, I know. Who do you hire first? How do you think about it?
Who do I hire first? Well,
I'm very curious about how you all would think about it.
I'm trying to think back 8 years ago
Yeah,
what we ended up doing,
that's right.
right?
But if you had to do it now, how would you think about it today?
There's no right answer for this question. I want to be very clear about this, right? There's a bad word out there called funding, right? It's either you have it or you have a lack of it or you don't have any of it, right? And so understanding what is that funding? And everybody they handle accounting very differently, right? In terms of, I may have budget for contractors versus employees. Understanding that, right? So if your funding is a mix of employees and contractors, okay, let's start there. Let's get the one employee, and let's make it very simple, right? Because it's going to be new. You got one employee that's going to be focused on accessibility. Maybe you have one contractor. Who is that contractor? Is it more of a consulting company that has some experience? But then you got to figure out who the right consulting company is.
That's exactly it.
Because there are a lot of companies out there, they will preach about accessibility. And that is important. I'm not going to say it's not. But at the same time, I need, if it was me, somebody who's going to want to dig in, understand my company, how we go about finding an issue. What do we do with that issue? I have this pet peeve. I don't like when somebody gives me a Word document, throws over the fence and says, here you go, we found some issues on your website. Okay, well
no one likes this.
Well, and my point is like, well, what
that.
would you like me to do with that Word document? Because now, because the way, again, maybe because I'm a little bit of a perfectionist, I'm gonna have to then look at that Word document. I wanna then maybe replicate what your findings were, make sure I understand it. Then I have to add it into a defect somewhere. Okay? Now that defect, what am I gonna do with that defect? Right? That's what people need to ask themselves. What am I doing with that defect? I'm all about defect life cycle management. I'm gonna own that defect. Even though I don't own fixing it, I'm gonna own, I touched it, so now I own it.
Right.
Until that thing gets corrected and I can validate it in production. So if I'm gonna bring in a consulting company or a contractor, I want somebody who's gonna do exactly what I just said. Be my partner. I want you along that journey. That's how you do it.
The requirement is you need some subject matter expertise.
That's
right.
right.
The requirement.
That's right.
You can source that in different ways.
Yes.
But the important thing is you have some subject matter expertise at your disposal. And then two, you're thinking, what does that mean long-term for my organization and how do I make that sustainable and grow that that capacity, grow that muscle so that you have it at your disposal long-term.
Yeah.
Okay. How do you ensure that accessibility is a must-have versus a nice-to-have, just given what's going on in the world with budgets, procrastination, et cetera, how do you enforce that message? Let's start with you, Mark, in the middle. Mark in the middle.
Great question. I'm very fortunate. At Capital One, we have a corporate standard that it is a must-have. There is no other way around it.
No, it's not a question.
And the important thing there is defining exactly what that means. For us, it's WCAG 2.1 AA. And so I might answer the question in a little bit of a different way of ensure that you have at your company, your organization, a clear definition of done or of accessibility for your company. I mean, most of us, we're pretty large companies.
Right.
But if you don't have that, work towards establishing that. And I would bring in, your legal and compliance partners and folks with that. Look at things like your definitions of done and what your requirements are and treat accessibility the same as you would for privacy, security. It preempts a debate about is this a nice to have or a must to have conversation, and more about how can we go back to enabling you to meet the requirements with tools and training and experts and things like that.
Fred, what do you think?
It also depends, again, on the audience, how you need to sell it. Say, hey, it's a legal requirement. We have to do it. I don't like that, though. I always say we're doing it because it's the right thing to do.
Yeah.
That's one way of looking at it. The reality is
it like
this.
customer satisfaction? Is it more money? Like what is it? Yeah.
Is it, I'm going to fix it after? I love that.
I know,
we'll
after.
Fix it
We're
after.
like, after what?
Well, after what, number one. But number two is, it's going to cost more money.
Yeah, way more.
If you do it afterwards, right? That's just the way it is, right? And then I have one of my friends from WID, right? I think gave me this analogy the one day, and I think it's really important, especially the concept of fixing it afterwards. if you're making blueberry muffins.
The muffin thing, yes.
The muffin thing, right?
Yes,
People,
I
love this analogy,
yeah,
right?
I love
when
the
she said it to me, I
muffin
was like, this is amazing.
Yeah.
I want a blueberry muffin. I don't put the blueberries in. I bake the muffin. I'm like, oh, I forgot.
You don't jam in blueberries at the end.
You can't put the blueberries in afterwards, right? The berries have to be part of it. Same with accessibility. You can't always try to shove it in afterwards. It's not going to work.
If you're in an organization right now where accessibility is nice to have and you're switching
Yes.
to a must-have, I think, one of the things you've got to do is address, your definition of done and say, for a release, we're not going to release unless it's accessible. But to switch to that, you have to give people information and tools and training to help them.
Why?
Because
why is this now a thing?
Back to know your audience. Figure out what messaging needs to be geared towards that individual or that group. I'm not shameful. I will use whatever it takes in order to get this done.
Yes.
Right? So if somebody says, well, it doesn't make sense, I'll be like, well, you know what? Look at my competitors. They're doing it. Why aren't we? And people are like, so leverage that.
Yeah.
Leverage that.
The competitiveness of people will come out a little bit. There's a timing piece that's important here too, which is like, talking about trying to get the blueberry, in the muffin after it's baked, which is, as accessibility folks, we're like, you're going to make it accessible. We can do it now while you're building it and working on it, together. Or it's going to be a lot harder later on and more painful for you to go back and fix it. But I'm going to hold you accountable to fixing it either way. So
we don't know if preview products. We have this conversation all the time where, well, this is a preview product. We're testing it. We're like, how do you know a product goes from preview to shipped? Oh, if we get enough customer feedback. I'm like, which customers? Is it people with disabilities? Because you're not going to have a good product for people with disabilities unless you have preview feedback from them. And then they say, oh, that makes sense. And I say, I'm not talking about, okay, you need to meet these standards and then you're done. It's, is this product usable for people with disabilities so you can even get feedback to make it a good product? And that's when we lean into, okay, when I say 1 in 4 people, that is a gross understatement.
That's correct.
Right? Like, hello, everyone over 25. One of y'all has arthritis or carpal tunnel because, many years of using horribly unergonomic mouses or mice and keyboards. Hello, everyone who listened to loud music in your youths. Now you're deaf in 1 year. And leaders relate so well to that because I know we don't like to talk about aging and accessibility together, but I think they align so much.
They do.
They align
do.
so much,
Yes.
right? And I think once we start really leaning into that messaging around X percentage of our customers are over the age of something, right? We know that. So shouldn't we make their lives a little better? Because those people tend to have money and they tend to have a little bit less patience when things don't work. We've got a good question from Christine. And she says, many have said tapping the ERG's employee resource groups for accessibility tips and feedback. Conversations within these ERGs are obviously confidential. How do you then share valuable knowledge from within an ERG to other ERGs or other companies without breaking confidentiality, but also just like personal, you don't want to air someone else's personal story.
Yeah, I mean, what's been valuable for me is just listening. I think people want to be heard. I'm always available to, if you want to call me and talk about, how, internal software is not working for you for whatever reasons, or if you have ideas around things we can do for people with your particular disability. I'm always open to listening. It doesn't mean that obviously I'm respectful of if their confidentiality and all that. And what we're rolling out is this survey to our all our employees. We're not asking them even, what disability they have. We're asking, if we're going to be looking at, product or features to do with dyslexia or read-write, can you, do you want to participate? Would you like to be part of that,
Right.
And they will still have their confidentiality kept. They'll just be working with our UX researcher.
Right.
Their manager won't even know.
I think the ERGs are really important, right? Your company made the investment in ERG. That's great. Your company is now beginning their journey to invest in accessibility. Marry those things together. We talked about budgets and how do we leverage budgets? What should we do? Well, you have resources in ERG, and I think what Aileen's saying is, hey, you know what? we have a new feature. We have a new widget. I always say widget. I love the word widget. What do you think about this? That's not me infringing on somebody's personally going, what disability you have? You're part of an ERG. Give me your feedback. It's a very cost-effective way of doing it.
That's right. What do you think, Mark?
Yeah, I think, Aileen and Fred nailed it. And I'm active in our BRG at Capital One that's for people with disabilities. And I found that exactly what you said, and same Fred, is it's a place where, one, it's a resource group. That's there to have some bit of a community. And without getting into anything that would infringe on privacy or people's specific or personal information, there's lots of things that you can do, from like simply sharing information and seeing if anyone wants to volunteer to either have a conversation, or it could be just connections into other parts of the company that you kind of partner with anyway.
Yeah.
So I think there's absolutely a way to protect people's privacy and sensitive information, and not get into that, but still leverage the group for information, for community, for sharing, and just making connections. I think earlier Fred said network, like make sure you build your network, and I agree with that too. And so those are all things that can be done with the BRGs.
I have found ERGs to be so valuable because I always ask, can I anonymize you and share this feedback, right? And remove anything personal, like, I work on X team. Nope, right? It's 10 people in the ERG said that they are struggling with using this new product and a screen reader. I'm not naming who they are, what they're dealing with, et cetera, et cetera. So anonymizing and just kind of doing this, but also really figuring out how they can get credit for this as part of their day job. They're making products better. I don't ever want ERGs to be unpaid labor. Okay, so there's a question that I'm extremely happy about because I'm dyslexic, so thank you whoever asked this question. How do you make digital experiences for people with dyslexia, dyslexic people, better while making the product better for everyone? I am, of course, extremely biased and have a million ideas, so I'm going to start with someone else. And Fred, what do you think?
It's a great question. I know we actually were just 2 weeks ago having a conversation about dyslexia and different fonts. And testing those fonts, testing the spacing and so on and so forth. So it's really a relevant conversation for something that we were actually looking at right now, because we know what fonts do work, but we were asked, are there additional ones? And I think that was great. And I think that's the beauty of it, because that's not an area that really people, when they think about digital accessibility, are like, dyslexia. They
it's not top of mind.
Right, it's not. It's like, screen reader. Keyboard, right? And again, I'm not downplaying those things, but this is a great topic. So when it came to us, it's like, we have done testing. We do testing on this, but it was asked for another solution. Can we look at these? I was like, this is a great scenario. So again, it's just the little things. It's just getting that feedback from that disability community, doing some testing with the different fonts that are out there. Listen, you know what's not going to work.
Right, you know what's not going to work.
Right.
Little curly fonts, don't do it.
That's right. Then you start getting to the bigger conversation about font size and what that means.
Part of making a modern, beautiful UI experience is that it is accessible and that it works for you, right?
Yes.
So I think, having, preferences about how you want to work is important. So as part of when we look at, releasing a theme, we're also looking at variants of that theme. So if for example, I don't personally like to work in dark mode, but I know a lot of people do. So if you want to work in dark mode, same way if you have dyslexia and you want a theme that works better for for people with dyslexia with the right font and the right, I can choose that. So I think it's allowing preferences in the way people want to work, and we all have, our needs.
I think that customization is key, honestly. But I'll tell you 3 things that we're doing specifically. One is we do have a product called Immersive Reader. And that does read aloud of specific things. Now I openly tell everyone, if you haven't tried it, use Immersive Reader. Second of all, I think it's incredibly important to realize there's equivalence classing with disability. So something that works great for low vision folk may work really well for dyslexic folk. And that might really work really well for a non-native speaker as well. So for example, right now, whenever I'm presenting something to an audience and I need to read something, they'll put it in a ginormous font in very small numbers of words on a page. And I can read that slowly, but albeit I can read it. That's also wonderful for my colleague who has low vision, and they read exactly the same way, zoom text, high contrast, and they are able to see one section of the screen at a time. And the non-native speakers say, actually, this is really good because you see each letter for itself and don't see like a jumble of text. Again, it's that inclusive design principle, build for one, extend to many, and you're ending up helping way more people than you think.
You bring up a great point too, Donna, just in terms of things like ROI, efficiency, customer impact. It's important for us to kind of to remember to try to gather as many impacts as possible across all of these different persona types or user types, in order to help make the case internally to our teams and our organizations that we're benefiting people with dyslexia as well as non-native speakers, as well as this group and so forth and so on. And there's so many times that answer, to your point, is multiple.
So we just, at our Ability Summit a few weeks ago, we released a new version of this inclusive design toolkit that we've been talking about called the Cognitive Toolkit.
I looked at it briefly.
So Cognitive Toolkit is set up exactly for this, for cognition. So think invisible disabilities, of course, but also thinking about things like focus, customization. How do you really figure out what a person is trying to do and remove the obstacle so they can get there? So it works amazing for neurodivergent folk. Christina Mallon on our team is the one who designed it, along with a few other folk, and she has ADHD. This is an awesome product because it works wonderful for people with dyslexia and for ADHD. And we are now asking other companies to go implement these cognition principles in your work and see if it works for your users, because it's a new area because there's no WCAG guidelines for it yet. So no one knows quite what to do. And this one is, I think, incredibly exciting because there are way more people who are neurodivergent than we think.
That's right.
Right? It is not 1 in 4. In the tech industry, I swear to God, it's 1 in 2 in the tech industry. There's a question from the audience, and this is a great question because this is going to lead to a raging debate, so this is going to be fun. Okay, ready? What level of automated coverage should we expect once we start using accessibility testing tools? What do you think? 1%, 100%, somewhere in the middle, 0?
It would make all of our lives easier if it was 100%. I don't think that's the goal, but I do think for scaling, you have to invest in automated tooling, absolutely. Otherwise, you're not just going to make the progress that you need to make, because doing manual audits is so expensive and it takes time. And it's also about, we were talking earlier about shifting left. If you can add automated tooling earlier so that they're not even coming to the testing phase if you put those in the hands of developers, they can do automated testing and flush out a lot of problems before it comes even handed over to your QEs.
Right.
And so I think where you put it might be as important.
That's a great point, where you put it. What do you think?
I think I agree with everything you just said. And I think for the audience, it's really about balance, right? And I agree. I'm not going to give a percentage because it's going to continue to change as you're going on your journey.
Right.
I tend to use automated tools personally for low-hanging fruit. Look at something really quick, boom, let it run through.
Right.
It's not going to catch everything. The tools are not meant to catch every single thing. You also have, and we'll go back to the funding budget conversation. I can only have so many manual testers on my team. Maybe I'm going to leverage the automated tool for these level of projects.
What do you think?
The scale that we are responsible for, you have to have automation. We rely on automation. Totally. There's no alternative that would allow us to scale for the size of portfolio and enterprise that we are. I think the question is, maybe I would ask it differently than like, how much automation should we expect into, my answer is as much as possible.
Right.
growth, the evolution, the maturation of our industry, our vision is to continuously increase more and more and more and more automation so that our manual testing subject matter experts can focus on optimizing fantastic experiences.
Right. When I think about accessibility testing, there really are 3 buckets of it. One is WCAG, obviously, that we all know. That is binary. Do you meet WCAG in these humongous number of permutation and combination sort of ways, which I would love to do automated as much as possible. Second one is this a usable experience for people, like you're saying, for people with disabilities? Like, yes, it might be WCAG compliant, but if you need to do some shenanigans with the screen reader to get it to flow in order, that doesn't make any sense. And same thing with dyslexia. You can pass WCAG and be like completely unusable for dyslexic people, just saying. And then third one is ableism. How do we prevent ableist experiences, especially in AI? Because the data sets are not set up for people with disabilities in mind. So how do we prevent ableist experiences? And for me, that is the next big challenge. For automated testing is a good measure of the maturity of the product, right? Because if, say your product is day 1, you're at maturity level 1. When you want to ship, you want to ship at level 5, right? So it's a good experience. So run automated tests at maturity level 1, and if you're failing those, you don't need my help yet, right? Like, you don't need to call me yet. And that's why we love just in-house tooling to say, run this. If you're failing these, fix them. Once you fix them, then call us, right? And we'll give you the next set of tools. I'd move from maturity level 1 to 2, then run these guided test pass type things. You're on your own. Okay, once you do that, then call us for 3, because we're gonna be able to tell you, like, what are your freeway scenarios or mainline, and we're gonna tell you the experience with assistive technology there. And then we look at ableism, blah, 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 and stuff and things, right? So loaded question, and what has your experience been with Evinced, the product, their approach to the company, products, the customer engagement, et cetera, et cetera? Who wants to start?
I'm happy to go
Please
first.
Go.
Capital One have been using Evinced tools for the last like 2.5, 3 years, I think now. Okay. We talked about automation and our need for tools that can help us scale at the scale that we have to care for in a company of our size. And we couldn't do that without a tool like Evinced. What's been really good, it's been a really great partnership as far as us communicating our requirements and like the features and the things that we would like to have or that would enable us to do more and kind of continue to grow and expand and innovate and evolve the program. So they've been a really good partner in that way.
You nailed it, partnership. I'm a big advocate for partnerships in this space. I don't look at companies as vendors. I look at them as partners.
Right.
I'm on a journey. If you're part of that journey, then you're a partner on that journey.
Where it's really helped is, in the past, we were doing other tooling and it was a lot of false positives.
Yeah.
And it's really hard building trust and, with engineering teams, if you're coming out with a whole bunch of false positives, they're just going to walk away and say, come back to me.
Once you know what you're doing.
So we're seeing really good results there.
I just want to thank all of you so much for sharing so openly what has worked for you, because none of this is theory, like you said it. This is not theory, this is practical. And you are sharing, combined, how many decades of experience do you all have with the space? And you've been through so many shifts in this industry. And I just want to thank you all, and thank you, audience, for being with us today. Thanks you so much.
Thank you. Thank you so much.